Hi, my name is Patty, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself. My favorite hobbies are doing yoga and painting. I'm here to tell you about my story, and that is my lived experience with mental illness. In 1971, I graduated with a degree in nursing. I joined the Navy for 2 years, and I became a nun for 12 years. All during this time, I had a deep yearning for my mission, my gifts and talents. You would have thought that these two jobs would have answered that because they were good jobs. But I was good at them, but something terrible was missing. I hurt deeply with this desire for something else. There was a deep sadness in me that I had to face, and I saw it in other people too. It brought me to experience a wound in myself that I had to deal with. In 1978, I made an 8-day retreat to make final vows as a nun. This was very hard for me because of the great sadness that I felt in myself and saw in other people. While I was on this retreat, I began to have runaway thoughts. My imagination was going haywire, and I was unable to sleep for 8 days. I was overcome with images and memories of suffering as a child, of memories of abuse and abandonment. My imagination had really gone out of control. While I was in this state, I began to experience a bright light that was compelling and powerful. Then I felt on my ear a breath and a voice that was a scary, taunting voice of evil. My body was on fire with an adrenaline rush. I was terrified. There was no one who understood what was happening to me, and neither did I. I was put in the hospital and put on meds for a diagnosis of schizophrenia and bipolar mental illness. The medication stopped the hallucinations and put out the fire, but the desire in me to understand what happened to me never went out. I did make vows as a nun for 2 years, but that fell apart because of paranoia and stress. I married for 4 years, but that fell apart too because of repeated bouts of highs and lows. In the highs, I was a compulsive spender, thinker, talker. In the lows, I couldn't get out of bed or brush my teeth, and suicide thoughts were always with me. The darkest hour came for me in 1992 when I was 42 years old, and I had lived with this illness for 28 years. As I walked into my home after a 12-week recovery from a suicide attempt, I gazed at a broken window in my front of my house that the police and ambulance had broken to take my unconscious body to the hospital. It was a broken window that no one had boarded up in my 12 weeks of absence. My knees shook as I looked at this window, somehow knowing I was looking at my own soul, broken and terribly alone. But in that following year, some divine spark in me made me determined to turn my life around. I wanted to take better care of myself. I didn't know how I was going to do this, but I knew that I had to be stronger than the emotions that were destroying my life. There was no one who understood or affirmed me with this struggle with darkness. It seems that in depression, I have no receptors for faith, hope, or love. Medications and even shock treatments never provided me any lasting relief for my sadness. I did find work, 3 different jobs. All 3 I failed at because of paranoia and stress. I finally found work working 2 days a week in a nursing home. The 5 days that I was off, I used art, meditation, and counseling to make myself and cope with the 2 days of suffering on jobs. Finally, after 6 years of doing this, I became a functioning nurse and compassionate person again. I had to learn to tolerate difficult feelings without behaviors of isolation or running away. I had to cope without compulsive thinking or talking or spending. It was not easy. It took 10 years of loving compassion for myself. There were many heroes in my journey, but most importantly was me. I was the one who had to deal with difficult feelings by using art, yoga, counseling, and medication. Lewis, my therapist, was also a hero. He gave me advice, but I was the one who had to put his advice into practice. My husband of the last 18 years was also a hero. He accepted me in spite of my weaknesses, but I was the one who had to learn to accept and trust him, and this took much time and patience. There were and still are villains in my story. Memories of abuse and abandonment as a child, failure at jobs, voices in my head, chemical imbalances in my brain, and stress with change all try to make me a victim. But I work with these moments creatively by turning them into something positive, by writing poetry when I'm crying, by doing yoga or painting when my dreams for myself are far off on a distant horizon, or by talking to a friend who is not afraid of me when my emotions are too strong. There is a moral to my story, and it is that everyone has a purpose and mission, and finding it requires walking through dark forests and deep valleys until one comes out on the other side where light and dark can live together in peace. There is no shame in having a mental illness. It is part of finding one's unique purpose and expression. Yes, it is a difficult journey, but I believe when faced, accepted, and dealt with on a daily basis, it is the greatest journey any human can make. We who are in recovery with mental illness are evolutionary pioneers, showing others there is a way in darkness. We are wounded healers because we help others lift up by telling our story of healing. Thank you.